So it is it's 6:40 something in the morning when I'm recording this. So I just woke up. This is fun. But today we're gonna be discussing the history of the Lawson Timber Company layout. So probably it's a good idea first to show you the layout itself. So let's go over here. So this is supposedly where Windsor Park, Colorado is. That entire stretch. As you can see, we have the trail from last night's super short with our Shay on the front, which it actually has been having a couple of problems, specifically whenever it's going around turns or going over switches, it just randomly derails, and that's mainly on the front truck. I think that's just because there's not a lot of weight on it. I don't know. I'll find the fix for it. But maybe also because of the 18-inch radius curves, but I don't know. Shays could handle curves that sharp, I believe. Anyways, so over there, that is the town of Newberry, the only confirmed town on the line, and this is north of Windsor Park, because Lawson Timber Company, crap. And then over there, we have the funny turn where the Shay was filmed last night, the logging camp, and then hippity hop right over there. So this is a better view of both of those. And then this turn that leads to this, and then to this town. And this is sort of because lore-wise, Lawson Timber Company comes in about right here into Wyoming. So this is all entirely north of Windsor Park. They're going up mountains and passes completely. And I'll explain why somehow it gets to Wyoming. But yeah, so that's a small Wyoming town, and then it just loops back into Windsor Park, because that makes sense. No seam dividers needed here, although that's where all my junk is stored, so that's the seam divider. And then that's the seam divider for Colorado and Wyoming, because yeah, that's also where I get couplers for locomotives and rolling stock that needs new couplers, because yay! So let's go over a bit of lore in terms of the layout. Like the main layout itself, not the railroad. So the layout was built back in, it was started technically back in 2019. No, 2020. Correct. Yeah, started back in 2020. My 7th grade year. So, I'm in 9th grade now. No, 10th grade. English. And basically what he did was, my grandpa got me a loop of HO scale track, and it was a Chattanooga Bachman set that, if you haven't figured it out yet, that inspired the Lawson Timber Company paint scheme, and that is number 1 on the railroad. And I'm not gonna grab it because I'm too lazy to. But then, yeah, that gave us everything. That basically laid the ground for the Lawson Timber Company, or what would become the Lawson Timber Company. Then about a year later, my dad helped the pieces of wood up. Fortunately, we didn't do it quite correctly, because the wood ended up misshaping, and on some parts of the layout there's maybe a percent grade, 2%, no, 1% at most. Well, there's a gradient on some parts of the layout, so it sucks. But we deal with it. Anyways, so Lawson Timber Company, when did that come into existence? Well, that came into existence about over the summer. that version of layout. But before, there were many different existences. Originally, this was supposed to be an unnamed railroad, and I just ran trains around. My original plan was to have a double track main line that ran all around the room, then go through with my parents, and yeah. Instead, they got me Atlas track, and they got me flex track. They didn't give me any turns. They only got me some flex track and some switches. And I began my building, and now if you don't know, my dad said, okay, we need cork, and he's like, okay. And what he did is he bought cork like that. I should have said roadbed, but it's fine. But hey, it adds on to the field, and it's a logging company. Logging companies didn't really have that, but lore-wise, it probably isn't too accurate, especially in the Wyoming sector, where this was completely built after railroad made contracts and whatnot. So, anyways, we'll get to that in another video. So, what happens is that steam locomotive existed. There's a cat at my door. Yes, I hear you. Go away. Okay. Anyways, I don't know if you could hear that, but he is going Murrah, and yeah. Not coming in. His paws are sticking through the door. Okay. Anyways. Basically, then, and I was originally thinking I was going to use Bachman Easy Track for this. Now I see that as a pain in the past. Anyways, yeah, Bachman Easy Track is not that good, especially if you have the black roadbed one in particular. That track's that's the stainless steel track. No, never get it. You always want copper or silver, nickel silver. You do not want stainless steel. It sucks. Sucks really bad. So yeah. So, or brass track, like Atlas. So you never want that. So yeah. And I had the black roadbed because yes. So I had the sucky track, which I still have the sucky track, and I have a track cleaner specifically. I got a track cleaner specifically for that track. And while I was on this layout, I tried to clean it multiple times. Now, if you don't know, I have filmed multiple videos on this layout during its period between Lawson Timber Company status and being built, but none of them really show any progress. I think the only one that showed progress was one I took back about almost 2 years ago. I don't know. But basically, it showed me sitting right, and I had my camera like right there, like behind the station. It is. Now, and then I was standing on my bed and working on the train and struggling. It was called Teenage Model Railroading, and it sucked. But yeah. So yippee. Anyways. So El Shay locomotive. Where did we start with the Lawson Timber Company? We don't want to hear all about all these other railroads. Well, first step is because I wanted a logging company after like a year, 2021, 2022. One of those 2 years, I wanted a logging company. So I started to focus more on logging company stuff. I built a small mine layout here. So I wanted to do more of industrial stuff, not like a normal railroad where it's go up, around in a loop. I wanted to do more industrial. So I got the idea for an HO mining layout, and it literally took up this entire thing, and it had a grade on it, and I ran number 1 up and down that grade. So yeah. Then 2022 came around, and that August, I actually made the first full loop of the layout. So everything was connected for the first time, although I still had Bachmann Easy Track, but from August onward, I strived to replace that with everything Atlas. So we kept going, and by December, I was gonna get I had a whole bunch of turns on the layout. I think only 1 corner, maybe 1.5 corners needed turns. On new Atlas turns, a section needed a 9-inch track, and we needed to, and I need to change my my thing to I need to change my track thing to a think. And to change the track to a controller thing to Atlas to where then it wouldn't race the rest of the track and we wouldn't have bad spotting on that. But also in August, that's when I got DCC. If you don't know, I do use DCC in the layout. That's why you see the Shay's headlight glow as bright as the sun, or number 2's headlight glow, or number 1's headlight glow. Also, that's why I know, like, the railroad guy sometimes uploads videos of them just running, not with music. That's the reason I don't, because it gets loud. And I think the Shay's my loudest one now. And yeah, if you're wondering if I have DCC locomotives, I do have a 1. It's not going to be ever a Lawson Timber Company locomotive because it's a diesel. Although my friends are convincing me into getting a 44-tonner, maybe. But it will probably likely be a switcher in Winter Park because I'm not taking that thing up and down the line. Checkmate. So, yeah, let's start talking about locomotives because most of the main layout just fell into existence after it was complete. So I laid out trees and stuff. 2022 around the layout, and then for Christmas, and then I just never took them down because it adds on to the feel. And since I've been doing Winter 1947 for so long now, since November, it sort of fits the theme of winter because snow. Also, I did get a rotary snowplow, so I have to show that off sometime in the near future. We will. It'll probably be in a video with the Shay. Probably, no, number 2. The Shay doesn't like it very much. As in, derailing front truck, which has led to more problems of front truck derailing. The Shay go vroom vroom. Fun. Anyways, yeah. So I got Lawson Timber Company number 2 in December. It was the first thing I bought after my seasonal job. For the first time, I bought it myself off of Amazon, with the help of my mother, of course. And it was my first thing I've ever used and bought. And I love that engine. It's a Hellback. It's cool. It's nice. And it's DCC ready, which means I can install DCC on it. You know what that means, right? Exactly. We're going to get a DCC locomotive hopefully soon. Maybe Lawson Timber Company number 5 will be DCC. We hope. But hopefully I'll get DCC in number 2 so then we can actually do some funny stuff. And I'll get a sound decoder too so then we can have the funny chuffing noises and loud chooch. Yes. We like that here. Anyways, so we like being, yeah, that would be fun. That would be nice. I would like that very much. I would annoy my friends a whole lot if they ever came and slept over and I just woke up in the middle of the night and they're sleeping on the floor and I just go choo choo and then they would wake up and be angry at me. But it's fun. It's a funny prank because my layout's a ceiling layout and I have to be on a step ladder half the time just to see anything. Anyways, I digress for that. Then I got number 4, August of 2023, literally this August. It has a gear problem. It doesn't like to go. It hops, put it simply. It leaps forward. It doesn't move forward. It leaps. So it sort of struggles to the ground and moves a bit every time. So yeah. And then of course for this Christmas I got L Shay. But yeah. Now some of you may be asking, well, where did you get a lot of your rolling stock from? The only pieces of rolling stock I had were corn couplers or whatever the heck they're called. I had that and then the Bachman stuff. I did get a Walters boxcar, which matched my Bachman Frisco. That's the Union Pacific boxcar I have, which is not accurate to the time period, but I don't care. It runs on the layout either way. But then a lot of my other stuff was bought at the Rocky Mountain Train Show in April 2023. The reason I'm saying 2023 is because for clarification and the fact that it is almost a new year. Yes. So yeah. And then my newest piece of, well, there's 2 new pieces of rolling stock. One of them came in June of came this year, or it was either June, July, no, it was August. No, it was over my fall break, so that would be like sometime in October. Yeah, sometime in October I went on a long fall break, longer than I'm used to. I'm used to a weekend and a Monday and a Tuesday. But they gave us a full week off, which I'm happy about, but also at the same time, like, what? So I decided, because I didn't know what the hell to do, I wasn't planning on anything that weekend, is to go in and let's go to the Colorado Model Railroad Museum, because that exists, and it's a beautiful layout. It's one of the best I've ever seen, but I've seen very few layouts, and most of the layouts I've seen are on YouTube and at train shows. You can tell I don't go out a lot. Anyways, so I got the railroad, now their sort of modeling. I got their boxcar, which is the Oregon, California, and Eastern Railway Company. It's that blue boxcar. I don't know if it's been seen in shorts, but let me grab it. It's that thing right there. Also, explanation. This is number 1. Yeah, here's number 1. This is her tender. This is number 4. The only locomotive I haven't replaced the couplers on, because I haven't had to replace any of the other couplers besides the Shay, because its front coupler was broken. And then here's number 2. She currently lays in a position where I can't really get her. But anyways, I digress. But yeah, and then by far my newest piece of equipment is the Funny Margarita Mixer of Death. Yes. We love HO. We love HO scale. So yeah, now I have multiple funny objects, including a Shay, which is my favorite locomotive. So let's go quickly over future plans. I don't plan to have very many locomotives on this layout. because I have DCC, but most of my locomotives are DC. So probably the locomotives that will probably never change from DCC will probably be the Shea, number 1, and number 4. Number 1 may get DCC, but that's only if I can fit it in her tender, because her shell is not big enough to get DCC. Number 4 is not likely because he's a dockside. They're a dockside porter, and they do not. They can like fit a headlight, and that's about it. And I'm not making its own little car that it has to connect up with just to get DCC. So, then the Shea is unlikely because if you don't know, I'm pretty sure my smallest locomotive is the Shea. In terms of size, not power. That thing is the strongest. I tested it yesterday. It pulled the entirety of every piece of rolling stock I have and I own, and it pulled it with ease. But it is by far my smallest locomotive, I think. Yeah. I haven't really put it up the size with anything else, so let's do it right now. Okay, let's drop her on the rails, maybe. It's about the size of number 4. She's our biggest, chunkiest locomotive of the bunch. So, it's fine. She's pretty big, but she is, again, she's pretty small for her size. Maybe in her auxiliary, I could shove something in there. Because I know people have done DCC Shays before. So, mine's an old roundhouse model. With a better motor, but yeah. So, maybe I'll be able to shove something in her aux to get it to that it doesn't. To then it can be DCC, but number 2 is likely the only one to get DCC out of the original 4. But I am planning for number 5 to be DCC ready, or just a bought and just rebuilt DCC model. No matter if that's an OS, and I'm mainly looking for a tank engine with her, but I'm okay with a mallet or even another 10-wheeler in place. Maybe even a consolidation. But yeah. And as in terms for the layout, there are no future plans for this layout. This is about as big as I'm going to get it, and I don't want to add too much before I have to take it all down when I'm going to college. Which is sad, but fortunately I am going to college because I need to make money. Because that's important in this day and age. Existential dread. Anyways, but yeah, so yeah, I am gonna be going to a train show this January. So if you see me then, recognize me, say hi. Maybe. I don't know. You're a stranger to me. Unless you're coming from Massachusetts or New York, and I know one of those 4 idiots, or a couple of those idiots. Then why are you down here? Why exist in my presence? Just kidding. You come up and say hi, don't make it too long because reasons involving that I'm a minor. Yeah, you know. So, yeah. Anyways, I probably can film. Let's make this as long as video as possible. I promised a 2-part video. Here's your second part, people. So today, we're going over the lore of the Lawson Timber Company. Let's begin. So the Lawson Timber Company started when 2 brothers, the Lawson brothers, decided in 1921 to go, ooh, we want a logging railroad. Ja, ja. Well, they weren't German or something. So they were brothers, so don't even do that. Don't. I know what you're thinking, just don't. Anyways, so Lawson Timber Company came into existence around 1921 when the Lawson brothers decided to build a extended branch line off of the noting. Anyways, off of the Camp Lindell Railroad, which, if you don't know, that's the railroad guy's layout. Funny, right? Very. Okay. My ears are going because of the light. I shouldn't be standing on a stepladder, but it's fine. Anyways. So, the Lawson Timber Company came into existence as a connection, as a branch line off the Camp Lindell Railroad. And yeah, it had also a connection with the Bright Falls somewhere in between, but yeah. So Lawson Timber Company equipment was commonly seen going up and down grade in New Hampshire. That's a long way from Winter Park, Colorado, I'll tell you that. But there's a story. So basically the only locomotives they had was a USRA 060, a 10-wheeler, a Baldwin 10-wheeler, which is number 2, and number 3, and number 4. Number 4 was just given to them as a gift from the Baltimore and Ohio, because yes, just kidding, it bought it. That's the only locomotive that wasn't given to them by another railroad. They actually bought it because I don't know if this is just because of lore. They just bought an 040 dockside locomotive, thinking it was a good idea. Which it was. It actually did help the railroad a lot, although mine's broken. So, anyways. So, they continuously logged in that area. But there are only few known events that have happened on this railroad so far. One of them, I believe, happened in 1929 when logging train, because this was a full-on logging company, a logging railroad before it moved to Colorado. Some stuff happened, which led to it becoming, we'll get to that. Anyways, so what happened is that number 1 was coming up the grade, one was coming down grade, is already made up this, I already created this for lore. Number 4 was going upgrade with empties. Number 1 was coming down with a fully loaded log train. Number 3 was somewhere up there with number 1. It was acting as a switcher, more or less, in the logging camps, but it was going to bring all the cars that were just finished by the end of the day. So it's around 12 o'clock. And number 2 is also another locomotive that exists, although it's on a siding with waiting for number 4 to pass. So, yeah, jaw. Anyways, and then we also have a 5th locomotive that exists. We don't know what that locomotive is yet. So, that's down in an interchange with the Camp Linda currently. So the telegraph guy, so how switching works on the Lawson Timber Company is that they have a telegraph post at every switch. So basically, wherever there's a switch, there's a telegraph post. Mainly on sidings. You're not going to see just a huge bunch of buildings off to the side in a yard. But mainly on sidings, out in the wilderness, they have telegraph offices at each of those switches, and basically they tell each other, hey, this switch is set for this, that. So, number 2 is sent into a siding. Number 4 is coming up the grade, and there's a blizzard happening. Keep this in mind. And erosion likes to do its thing. So, number 4 is climbing the grade up. And number 2, they're both approaching. Number 2 has to pull our train in a bit more. When suddenly, and without warning, like that guy on YouTube Shorts that's been getting popular recently, at least for my recommendations, ground pulls out from under the second track, 2 tracks, and a landslide happens in the snow in the middle of winter, sometime in 1929. And not the season of winter, it's when snow is just falling. So, number 2 gets pulled down, and a lot of her cars get pulled down with her. Number 4 is pushing a train upgrade because she isn't quite strong enough to pull stuff upgrade without coming down because she's built like a rock. So she's pushing it up, and she doesn't know anything about this. All she knows is that she's just got to push ahead. And while this is all going down, telegraph office gets pulled a bit in, and the guy luckily managed to escape as soon as it started happening, but telegraph wires are broken now. So they cannot communicate with anywhere else on the line, which means no communication can be had with the telegraph office that is in the direction number 2 was coming from, and nothing down south. Luckily, there's nothing coming from down south, but there's something coming from up north. Well, down south, up north. I'm talking about the grade. So downgrade, but upgrade, there was something coming. A really fast train being pulled around 25 miles per hour by number 1 was flying down the grade at high speeds. Do you see where this is going? So basically, number 4 manages to stop last car before, because there's basically no visibility. They have barely any visibility. Well, they have to rely on the telegraph offices heavily before going. So they're coming, and then they see a red flag, and they wonder, what the hell? Why is he waving a flag? We haven't had to use that since before we got the telegraph offices installed. Then he looks ahead, and he notices his skeleton cars are falling into oblivion. So they stop at the last skeleton car because he realizes, and they get out of the cab and notice that most of their train is now, which was 15 cars, is now in this ditch, as well as a bunch of other pieces of log and rolling stock, which are all crumbled and jammed into the dirt, and then far below number 2 rest, partially covered in dirt. Luckily, she didn't get too damaged, but she would need to be repaired. But as I said, number 1 is still plowing down this grade. So she's plowing down this grade at high speeds, and suddenly, without warning, like, the telegraph office upgrade does not know what just happened. All they know is that number 2 isn't telling them the downgrade office is not telling them if number 4 is coming up the grade or not. So they're just like, oh, he must have went into the siding, and then after number 2 passed through, he must have still been in the siding. So they're hoping that, and if you're wondering what it basically looks like, here's the main line, here's the siding, and then everything so basically everything to this point, so it would be just at this curve and just at the straight point is gone. So both tracks have been removed because how it's sort of set up is like this. So they're still at a bit of an angle, so when the landslide came, took the telegraph office, which is usually on this side of the track, so yeah, it's on the main. And boom, boom. It makes sense now. Number 1 sees this red flag rapidly waving, and they know that they weren't getting anything from the telegraph. So this is what the engineer and firemen do. They use their brains. They realize that, oh wait, we haven't had to use flags in a long time. They got no communications from the downgrade telegraph office. basically what happens, El Chooch, they both abandoned ship because they knew they're booking it at 25 miles per hour. There's no way they're going to survive this train accident. And so they think there's a train accident up ahead. So they both jump ship at 25 miles per hour. Well, no, that would be around 30, flying down grade. And then loud banging noises and more dirt. So the main starts to be pulled down. Number 4 loses one more skeleton, that last skeleton car, and it starts to teeter over and lands in the dirt, but doesn't die. So a landslide, and all 25 cars on number 1 was hauling disappear. They don't exist anymore. Or they do exist, they're just buried under the dirt. Number 1 is nowhere to be seen. Not even the crews of number 2 can figure out, although a bit more dirt comes flying down and lands and belts on their locomotive a bit more. So, yeah. So, once everything is found out, the telegraph office for the upgrade comes down. They're like, what the hell? And what they do is they send, they have to literally walk downgrade to the next switch office and tell them what happened. And then the other guy told the camps up north what happened. And number 5 and number 3 show up to the rescue. Now, number 3 can basically do nothing. She's at the upgrade. The most she can do is help with telegraph wires. So that's what she does. She helps with telegraph wires. She gets them down. Temporary track is laid over in a switch-like thing that goes around where the telegraph office used to be, and over where there is still ground. So temporary track and number 3 is successfully rescued from the upgrade side. And number 5 and number 3 get the work, pulling number 4 out. So number 4 is saved, luckily. Luckily, the firemen put her fire out once they found out that she was in trouble. Once they knew number 3 was coming down that grade, they knew to keep her fire out, so they actually did very suddenly. They didn't want anything in there. So they pulled her out, they restarted her fire, and number 4 got on the double getting stuff out. So they all got him. A wreck train was pulled up from the camp, and they started pulling out locomotives, rolling stock, and whatever else. Most of the rolling stock was found. Unfortunately, a lot of it had to be scrapped or heavily repaired because of how bad of condition. Some rolling stock was never found ever again. Number 1 was found a month later under all the soil, and number 2 was got down about a week after. Luckily, they winched and pulled her up a set of rails that they laid down and pulled her up grade, or up the side of the mountain pass to where the track is, got her back on track, took her down, repaired her, and got her on. Number 1, it took basically half a year to repair her because of how badly damaged she was. Basically, they had to reorder, they spent as much as a new USRA 060 on her, which she is a USRA 060. So, yeah. So, basically, end the story. Train go down landslide, and it was not fun for anyone. Anyways, back to the main Lawson Timber Company, because this video is getting long. So, 1939 is the year they move. One of the reasons is because they're starting to use business around there. They need somewhere else to move, and plus, they want to go to a place where there are logs, lots of logs. Yeah. So what they decided to do is they noticed that there's this old abandoned pass now in Colorado, Rollins Pass. They're like, well, we could use that pass look from there. So they bought buyout tracks from the Denver Rio Grande Western, and during 1938 and 1939, they moved all their equipment that they have left to there. And then something amazing happens in 1939. The Rio Grande asks, hey, we want you to make a deal with the Union Pacific as well, and we want a connection through these mountains up to Wyoming, to this little town. So they said, okay. And they did that, and they rebuilt most of their trucks into better looking trucks. They kept the logging camp trucks the same because they didn't need that. They made more logging camps. There was now mines along the line, so they had mining tracks and whatnot. And they make it to Wyoming. Now, the Lawson Timber Company is now huge, and now they have to get all this transfer traffic up. And they're a Shay, a 10-wheeler, a 060, a Porter, as well as whatever the mystery locomotive is, cannot cut it. So they order about 20 new locomotives and 5 more too. So 30 locomotives in total. All 25 locomotives total. So I'll have 30 locomotives total. And, well, yeah. So, yeah. And then, I can't remember what the date was, but November something, 1947. Basically, all the videos I've been uploading, that one day where there was a wreck, 1947, that's the only canon wreck where basically during a blizzard, a tree fell, number 2 hit it and ate it. Luckily, she had to be sent back because that pine really did some damage to her. She was sent back about a month later on the grade. So, hey. And then, yeah. If you're wondering what happened after the main Lawson Timber Company story, which is up to 1947 so far. Well, 1951 comes around and they're like, this is a good grade, but we're starting to lose money. A lot of the logging camps are shutting down, a lot of the mines are shutting down. And most of the towns we serve now are now becoming non-rail accessible. One of the only towns that is really rail accessible at this point is Newberry, where there's a scrapyard, which has been seen on the layout in this video. So they decide, let's scrap this line. Let's move to Oregon. So during this time, which is between 1949 and 1951, they bought a diesel, and that started helping remove track. And then so when they moved to Oregon, they bought a couple more 44-tonners. And basically, these 44-tonners started doing most of the work. The steam locomotives went into a maintenance shed and are only really used for switching. And then they moved to Wyoming because they started losing enough money where they couldn't maintain their line in Oregon, which was bigger than the Camp Linda one, but way smaller than that one. So they went to a smaller line, which is smaller than the Camp Linda line in Wyoming. They were about 120 miles north of where they had entered Wyoming. They only went 20 miles into Wyoming, but they were about 100. So they were about 100 miles from where their last piece of track was on their old Colorado line. And then this was so 1957 is when they moved to Wyoming. In 1969, because they were there from 1951 to 1957. In 1969, so almost 10 plus years of surviving in Wyoming, the company finally shuts down. But they're looking to scrap all their steam locomotives. They just kept them just in case, but they never ran them. They were rusty and old, and they were planning to scrap them now. When suddenly, a group of boys from Winter Park said, "We'll buy those for you from whatever price you have. We'll just have to make loans and stuff and work our way to get that money back. They give it back to the bank, but we'll buy it." And the line and the Lawson Timber Company said, "You gotta have that for free. We don't need these. They were gonna go to scrap anyways. Our company's done. We're dead." So the Lawson Timber Company officially files bankruptcy, and the locomotives are transferred south back, and they only asked for really the original 5 and a couple more in between, including the first G44 tonner. So all of them are sent down to Winter Park, and in Winter Park, Rollins Pass, unlike what happened today, where Rollins Pass became a side-by-side and Jeep and just a trail to drive and run on and do stuff on, it still had its tracks laid. The Lawson Timber Company never picked up any of its tracks. It only just stopped existing there. It filed for abandonment and just left those tracks just in case the Rio Grande or the Union Pacific wanted to use those tracks, which they occasionally did for certain trains, but that's all. So when the locomotives came back, they fixed up the trackage, like the state of Colorado fixed up the trackage for these towns, and they actually moved all the locomotives to one of the towns. Number 2 was number 1 was located at Winter Park. Number 2 was located at Newberry. Number 3 was located somewhere, and number 4 was in Wyoming. And in the late 90s, the grandchildren of these boys decided, let's restore these locomotives and run them on a railroad. So, because the railroad was still there, it was just barely used. Occasionally, the G44 tonner would run up and down the tracks and to make sure it was still good, because basically this was just the track had become a sort of like a cool little thing, and in a caboose they also got some of the equipment. In a caboose they would have people ride up and down the grade, and you could pay for a day trip to ride all the way into Wyoming and all the way back down into Winter Park. So the tracks were still used, sort of. So then they decided to turn that company, which the boys that originally built, got number 1 through 5 and a few more back, decided, let's make a scenic railroad. So they did. They restored all the locomotives, and in 2023, all of them are running. And they run the small scenic railroad, which is known as the Lawson Scenic. And it goes the full length. You can ride all the way to Winter Park and to that small town in Wyoming, or all the way, or down south, or whatever. Basically, they just remade the railroad. So yeah, so that's lore on the Lawson Timber Company. That's also the history of the layout. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was really fun talking about the entirety of this little layout. Hopefully in the future, I'll get a bigger space, and I can actually make either a shelf or maybe even a table layout of the Lawson Timber Company, where I can have it to where then we don't have 18-inch radius curves, and maybe the shade won't derail as much. And maybe even accurate road bed. But that's for now. See y'all in the future.